Student, let's start discussion on very important topic, and most of the interviewer will ask in their interview what is a wireframe, what is a prototypes, and how to do wireframes. So it's a very important topic in a business analyst perspective. So I'll explain you entire thing. Before that, if you like my video, please like and subscribe my channel, so that's motivate me to create more videos for you. So let's start the discussion on the wireframes and prototype is essential tool for the business analyst. I'll be explaining you that thing in a perspective of business analyst. So the agenda of the this seminar or this slide is to explain you what is a wireframe and why they do need them the business analyst, why the business analyst will required to understand the wireframes and the prototype, and then I we will go to the understanding of prototype more than just the pretty pictures, how to draw, what are the tools we use to to draw the wireframes and prototype, and then discuss on the key difference between the wireframe and prototype, low fidelity, high fidelity, how the wireframes will look like, what are the tools we use for the wireframes and the prototypes, and the business analyst role in preparing the wireframes and prototype, how the business analyst will the UI/UX developer or by itself business analyst will draw the wireframes and prototype with using these tools, and the tools of the trade, how to do that thing, and the best practices and the common pitfalls for the wireframes and prototype, and then finally we discuss on the question and answer things. So let's move on the next slide. That is a bridging the gap from idea to reality. So the wireframes and prototype will help the business analyst or the sub the op or the business team to they have the idea, business problem, or the scope or the objective that will cover how the UI/UX or how the prototype of that product or the system look like. So that helps from the wireframes and prototype. So the text heavy requirement document can be misinterpreted, leading to rework and the project delay. Yeah, that's the most that there is the understanding gap. If you just write down the business requirement document or the functional requirement document in a text way, and you don't put the wireframes and prototype, so the developer will not understand what thing where they will put on the screen, how the screen will look like, how the user will interact with the screen, so that they are not understand, and they are not able to develop the functionality in the front end functionality. So that's why the wireframes and the prototypes are very essential and very important, and that must be in your the business requirement document or the functional requirement document or the functional specification document. And the solution to visual communication like wireframes prototype help the stakeholders see the product in a future, to see the wireframes and prototype, and they are able to get the understanding of how that product or the features look like, what are there the business problem they are get solved, where we put the menus, where we put show the data, what the UI/UX look like, that will be understanding they get from the wireframes and prototype. So benefits for the BA from the wireframe and the prototype is to improve the understanding of the all the stakeholder, faster the feedback they will get, and reduce the ambiguity and increase the stakeholder buy-in, and that will help the stakeholder to understand or the feel of the product, so that will add more the stakeholder increase interest increase in that product or functions. And analogy building and in-house without the blueprint or the blueprints. If you are constructing the house and we don't have how the blueprints or how that house will look like, how what is the structure of that house, so that's the important gaps, and we don't know what we are building like that way. So such a situation will happen in the IT projects. So so that's the help we take from the wireframes and prototype. So let's discuss on the what is a wireframe. So the definition of wireframe is, it is the wireframe is a low fidelity diagram. It is a static representation of product layout and the functionality, and which will draw the we just need a pen on paper or the simple tools to draw the wireframes, and think of it as a skeleton of the UI/UX user interface and user experience. The purpose of the wireframes and prototype to focus slowly on the structure, content placement, where we content place the content and the basic user flow without design the element. We don't design in proper way or in proper, color and combinations there. We just, to simply how the screen will look like, user screen will look like. And the key characteristics of the wireframes are as the it is an simple shape lines and the text face holder, no color image, and the detailed typography focus on what goes where not and how it work. And the example like the insert and simple wireframe like login screen, a basic e-commerce product page, or how the the home page will look like. So that's thing we are consider in the wireframes. And once the wireframe is get done, then we will go for the prototype. So let's move on the next slide. So the BA superpower clarity through the wireframe. So if we want to explain the functionality to the developer or the business team, so the wireframe is the best method or the best way to explain them wireframes and prototypes. So elicit and validate helps the stakeholder visualize the requirement and identify the gaps early. If we collect the requirement from the stakeholder with using the requirement gathering techniques and analyze the requirement, and then we prepare the wireframes and prototype of that requirement. So the business team or the subject matter expert will easily understand the difference between the requirement and the how the user interface will look like. So they will immediately give you the feedback to upgrade or to make the changes or the correct your wireframes and product and how that will be work. So that thing is there. And the clarifying the ambiguity, translate and abstract the ideas into the concurrent visual. So it's no it easy way to translate your ideas and thought in the form of the look like product or the wireframes and prototypes. So early feedback allow to quick iteration and cost effective changes. We will get the early feedback from the businesses, and may accordingly we make the changes before we start the development and taking efforts to the development. So that's benefit from them. And communicating with the developer provide the clear visual guide for the developer and designers. It will be how the UI UX should look like, where they need to put the functionality, and there it is and the button, or it is a link, it is a radio button, or it is a text box, or it is the draw down. So that will things will easily get understand by developer and what data that should contain. So that will help them to entire screen functionality, and it helps the prioritization, the stakeholder understanding and relative importance of different features or the functions. It will help them to prioritize the UI UX things. So it's help to the developers also. So let's move on the next slide, that is the prototype bringing the design of lives. So the prototypes will increase the design of life and their help. The definition of the prototypes is the high fidelity. It's the wireframes are the low fidelity and the prototypes are the high fidelity, and it is an interactive representation of a product simulating the final look and feel. Whenever we click on the button or the link, then what will be happen. So that entire things will link in the prototype, and that is used by the the functional team. And the key characteristic of prototype is it is an interactive clickable elements and translate. It has a drawdowns include the color combination images prototype and branding simulating the real user interaction, can range from the medium to high fidelity. So that all things we should do in the prototypes, and we use the different tools that available in the market for doing the prototypes to developer will get easily understand and able to build the software for the products. So let's the prototype validating and the experience of the prototype. So the user experience, the testing, we will test the user experience, how would allow the users to usability testing with the real users, how the user UI UX would look like, the what are the fields we show in the drawdowns, what we need to enter into the the UI UX screen that should be in the user experience part. Then the stakeholder buy in, provide the a tangible feel of the product, increase the confidence level to the stakeholder on that product, and they will understand how their the product will look like. So that all things in the the user perspective is contained in the prototype and reduce the development risks. and identify the design flow and usability users before the coding begins. So that will help the developer, where they put the things, how the UI UX will look like, what the masters they could take on which screen they can understand easily, and the refine the requirement. It uncover the hidden requirement or unexpected user behavior. So that helps from the refining the requirement, short the requirement, prioritize the requirement, and identify the unclear requirement, and to open points. So that's help from the prototypes and user management presentation. Power tools for the demonstrating the product vision helps to the product vision to work on that, and translating the complex interaction ideas for understanding multi-step process, or it helps us the translating your ideas or the thoughts in the UI UX format or in the prototype format. So that's the benefit from the prototype. So let's move on the next slide. Yeah. So the why the BA is crucial role for the visual design and the process. Why the business analyst will to part of the visual process or the design. So first one is a requirement, translating the requirement, facilitating the workshop, user flow definitions, and the feedback collection and the management and validating and verification. So translating the requirements are converting the functional and non-functional requirement into the visual concept. So the wireframes and prototype will help the business analyst or the designers. So whatever the functional and non-functional requirement to convert them into the visual concept, how the visually that will look like, and the facilitate the workshop, leading the sessions to gather the input and gain the consensus, and wireframes and prototype how they look like, how the user interaction with them. So that's the facilitating, and user workflow definition, collaborating with the UI UX designer and define the clear user journey, how the user journey will look like, what are the benefits user will get from that. So all these things, the user interface will include in the prototype, and that helps the business analyst. And the feedback collection and management, systematically gathering the feedbacks or the requirement from the subject matter expert or the business team, and analyze that and incorporating the stakeholder, and again update the UI UX for that. So that's the feedback collection and management. And the validation and verification, ensuring that the various accurately represent the agreed upon the requirement, or if you show the UI UX of each requirement, so that they make sure that it is as per the requirement and how the subject matter expert or development wants. So that should be look like in that way. So that's the important thing, and the design process perspective of business analyst. Let's move on the next slide. That is the your visual design toolkits, or what the tools or you should use for to preparing the wireframes and prototype. So first one, you draw the wireframes with the help of the pen and paper, always good for the starting point. There is a whiteboard you can draw there, and then use a balsamic tool for mock-ups, whimsical tool, and the high fidelity, and to draw the prototype, so you should use the Figma. So my personal, I use the Figma to draw the prototypes and the wireframes. Adobe XD is one of the good tool. Sketch is also there. InVision is I also use, and it is also the good technique. I am also use the Azure RP, and it is also the best tool, Azure RP. You can do entire wireframes and prototype in the Azure RP, and it will help you definitely on that point. So maximize the impact, tips for the success of to creating the wireframes and the prototype, and what things you should keep in mind while doing that thing. So start and the simple. Begin with the low fidelity wireframe and to iterative quickly to the prototypes and wireframes to understand that thing. We should start with simply draw the wireframes and prototype on the pen and the pen and paper, and the collaborate actively and involve stakeholder, users, designer, and developers, interact with them, collect the requirement, manage that requirement, enhance that requirement, and focus on the user flow. First, keep in mind how the process or how the user flow will look like, how the user journey will look like in that for each particular models. So ensure the user journey in iterative and logical way. Think on the user perspective, what things they want, iterate and iterate and iterate. You should always do the iterate and iterate and iterate again and again. Be prepared to make up the multiple revisions based on the feedback, based on the requirements, and provide the contents, explain why certain elements are placed where and why they are there, what are the the tasks which completed by the user. So explain to do the 5 why techniques or 5W1H analysis techniques you should use, and the document decision, keep track of feedback and changes the made, and know your audience, understand their requirement, then tolerate the fidelity of your visual, and who are your the presentator. So that's thing presenting, who you presenting, do the demonstration with the users. That thing help from the wireframes and prototype. And then the let's move on the last slide, that is a conclusion. The essential tool for the clear communication and effective requirement validation. It helps us to communicate with all the key stakeholder, and it empower the BA to lead the visual process, minimizing the risks and accurately delivery. It helps the end user to feel the goods. It is crucial for ensuring that the development product truly meets the business need and user expectations. And it will be the invest their skill to evaluate your audience as a business analyst, and they know how the final product will look like, how they feel on that final product. And finally the question and answer. So guys, thanks for attending the wireframes and prototype sessions. If you have any open points, and if you don't understand any points in that slide, please do comment and like my video and subscribe my channel, so that motivate me to create more videos for you. Thanks guys.